Flipping houses is a really difficult business. It really is one that chews you up and spits you out. It's like you always have to have your foot on the gas, otherwise you lose ground. And it's a really difficult thing sometimes, and I think it burns a lot of people out. I work with a lot of different investors as clients of ours, and so I see a lot of them, especially new ones, get in the game, and most don't last a whole long time. And I've been there before myself. The early part of my career as a house flipper and a real estate investor, I kind of use the words interchangeably. I started in St. Louis. I moved to Omaha, Nebraska, actually, and then Denver, Colorado. And I learned a lot of lessons there, most of them the hard way. And I had some successes as a real estate investor, and once again, a lot of failures. And really, it seemed like I would have some successes, and then I would lose it all, and then have some successes, lose it all. And that cycle had continued over and over and over again. And like really looking back, a lot of the wins that I had weren't really wins because of my skill. They were more like wins because the market gave me a lot of wind at my back. But basically, I am here to tell you the 5 reasons you should quit flipping houses, but then the couple reasons that I keep doing it anyway. So basically, what does suck about house flipping, and is there ways to fix it? And I think there really is. But first, let me tell you about the one that actually broke me. The one that made me actually quit flipping. You see, when I moved out to Chattanooga, I decided that I was done with it. Quit flipping houses in the way that I was, in a scalable way. I don't necessarily mean, I came out to Chattanooga because I was going to go back to being a DIY flipper, where I did pretty much all the work by myself, sourced the deal by myself, did the work myself. And that, if you've watched the different levels of real estate investing, that's level 1, the DIYer. And it's great. You can make a good living doing that, but that's it. You replaced a job. Might be a lucrative job, but it's not the type of thing that gets you far ahead. And so when I moved out to Chattanooga, I had kind of given up on house flipping or real estate investing on a larger scale. And yeah, I had the one project that was the straw that broke the camel's back, the one that really broke me. And, there were a lot of dumb things that I did on that project. And one of the biggest things is that on each project I did, I kept taking bigger and bigger and bigger swings. I was really going for grand slams on every project. And it was inevitable that I would get caught on one. You see, I had in the past always had the market wins at my back, meaning that I would buy these properties, but the market was appreciating so quickly that it covered a lot of mistakes, and I was making a lot of mistakes. And this one, the wins weren't as strong. I was in a neighborhood that didn't appreciate as fast as the rest of the market, and I got caught to the tune of several tens of thousands of dollars, if not more than that. It's hard to say how much I actually lost on that project because I was also running the construction company at the time, and that was making money. And I wasn't as good at keeping track of all that at the time. And so I don't know exactly how much I lost, but I know it was quite a bit. And really, that is when I started to develop my newer strategies, which then became Larossa Systems. Because I would go to that project every day after I knew I had lost my butt. I basically went there every day to work, and I had to let contractors go off the project because I didn't have the money anymore to keep them going. And so I decided that the best way for me was to do the project on my own. And so it was basically like my prison sentence. I got to go to that job site every single day and think about all the dumb mistakes I made, how I took on too big of a project. I did too much. I changed the scope during the project. I bought in a market or in a neighborhood that wasn't ready for what I was going to do with it. I overbought on the house. Every day I got to think about all those things. And then this guy across the street had bought a house. And, I became friends with him because I was there working every day. And I watched the way that he did it. And he bought this house. He didn't try to do an addition. I was doing a pop top on this house and building a 3-car garage in the back, which required all kinds of concrete to come in to do it. Did a nice stucco finish. But this guy, he just bought this house and he didn't tear up the inside that much at all. He refinished the floors that were already there. He did put in some new cabinets and some countertops. He put in a nice tile floor in the entry area himself, and he did some painting, and he did a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And in the time that I was doing this big project, he came in just for a few months. He was in and out. I looked at the numbers. He made a healthy profit on it while I was sitting here for basically a year straight going to this job site that I knew that when I finished it and sold it, it would only be me finally taking the losses that I was going to take. Once the loans were paid back and such, it would just be finally taking my loss. And that was really terrible feeling, and I knew that if I ever did it again, I was gonna do it a different way. And that's when I started to develop the all-weather approach that you'll find in a different piece of content. But today is about the 5 reasons that house flipping really sucks. And number 1 is dealing with contractors. I mean, you knew that one would make the list. But really, the guys that you're dealing with on these investor grade rehabs are just a different type of contractor. I know I say that a lot, but it is very true. I just go look at these forums and they talk about these guys like it's some kind of commercial polished company. And those just aren't the guys that you're going to hire for these types of projects. They're the types of guys you hire for commercial, polished type of projects, and their price reflects that. If you want the types of guys that you are going to hire for these projects because it makes you money, because their costs are lower, therefore they can charge less. They don't have the big overhead that comes with being polished and sending polished invoices and constant updates and having training programs and so on and so forth. You are going to deal with a different type than they're talking about in those forums. And that's okay. You just got to learn how to deal with them. But that learning curve is very high. And that is like one of the main things that burns people out, is having to deal with what we call the contractor's black hole is the main thing that burns people out, which is where you get these guys going and it's always hot from the start. They start the project well, everybody's happy, like, hey, I finally found the right guy for this project. And then things start to slow down a little bit. You hit some obstacles on the project, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, has anybody even been at the job site for the last couple of weeks? Why won't he pick up his phone? Oh gosh, contractor's black hole. Now, why does that happen? There are a few reasons that happens. One is because you suck. You're not a good person to deal with. You're dealing with it like it's the commercial world and using some like corporate project management techniques. And these guys are just like, I'm not going to deal with that. There's other work out there than to have to deal with this person that's up my A all the time. And I know that's not the intention, but that's what it feels like for a lot of these guys. And so they'll just flow like water to the next thing that's not as difficult. Sometimes you'll get somebody under your thumb that way, but it's usually only a matter of time before they're not. And it gives you a different type of contractor. It doesn't give you the type of contractor that goes and makes decisions out there and really like leads a project. It gives you a yes man. I'm talking about the type of person that will live under your micromanaging rule. But that's not the most common reason people fall into the contractor's black hole. It is one of the reasons. But the main reason is just the nature of the business itself. Think about this. These aren't big companies. These are small businesses. And a lot of these guys don't have backgrounds in business management and sales and so on and so forth. So what happens is they pick up a job, a project from a customer, and that is where the money's at for them right now. To get that project kicked off, they get the initial payments, they get to take big chunks out of the project, but eventually they hit obstacles like permits and decisions that need to be made by the customer and so on and so forth. And then it gets harder to get to the next payment from that job or from that project. But they're a small business, so they need to be thinking about their next payment. Otherwise, they can't pay their crew, they can't put food on their own plate, their family, so on and so forth. And so they have to think about the next job. So now they go out searching for another project so they can have that initial chunk of work that gets them some payment. And then let's just compare those two jobs. Now they've picked up two projects. They have the one that just started, that's where the money's at, another one that's in an obstacle, but eventually this second project gets to the same obstacles. Now the first one is easier to push forward, and so now they go back to that one, and that's where the money's at. Now this other one, but then a third one comes in. All right, but now they don't have the bandwidth to take all of those things, but they have them locked down, and so they now kind of show up to each one sparingly and press on the one that's the closest to the money. That's almost the way it always works. How do you prevent that? Well, you have to make all three of the jobs your job or your project. And, that's how you combat it. You have to make sure that these guys feel comfortable with you and confident in you that you do have the next project lined up. They don't got to worry about that other crap. I mean, you don't say that outright that they don't have to worry about the other crap, but you kind of do. And then you, as the ultimate project manager, make sure that those obstacles are being dealt with. The admin of the city stuff, or thinking down the road of what obstacle is going to come up next. And if you're breaking through those barriers or setting those barriers to be broken up, then you'll keep them working, keep them on a clear sight to the next paycheck, and that will keep them on your project, keep them working. And there's one other thing to say about that is keeping the surgeons at the table. So you want these guys working on the project, not doing admin crap. You do that, or have somebody else do that, and that will free them up to work. And, that goes into some other things, but mainly what it goes into is that's like these guys aren't your employees, they're contractors, but if you're doing it right, they kind of work like employees. So we're talking about job satisfaction. They do not want to be doing admin work. So if you can take that off the plate for them and let them just work, they'll be much happier about it. And therefore, you'll get a better performance. Now, there is a third reason why you end up in the contractor's black hole, and that is because they're dirty contractors. And truly, they suck. And you will find those people who have bad intentions, and it's not right here that we're going to talk about how to combat that. There is other content out there from me on the different types of dirty contractor tricks, and they exist, and you'll deal with them on a regular basis. Dealing with contractors really comes down to 3 steps. One is you consistently recruit and level up your vendor pool. When I say vendors, I mean all vendors, but mostly contractors. Create smart scopes of work. You cast the vision. and you clearly deliver that to the contractors that you're hiring for your project. That is your setting of expectations. And 3, holding accountability to the things that you clearly set, having the hard conversations. The number one reason that I quit flipping houses was dealing with contractors. It's very hard. The number 2 reason, budgets always get blown. Seems like no matter how perfect you are at building a scope of work or a budget, always something comes up in the project that expands your budget. And sometimes a really big expansion of your project. There are the triple threat of issues that always seem to get you. That's the bleeding of the house, like water intrusion or mold or pest infestation. 2, there's structural issues. 3, the pro DIYer. That's the person who owned the house before you and thought they knew how to be an electrician or a plumber or a framer, and there's all kinds of issues inside of the wall that you have to pay for later. And one extra is demands from codes enforcement or the city. Now, there's 2 sides to that argument, that maybe you should be doing those things anyway. But, that's tough to say, because if you were just going to rip everything out and start new and do everything perfectly by the book, well, then you should be doing new builds, because there's no real advantage for renovations anymore. The advantage of a renovation is that you can save a lot of the things that are there. They are grandfathered in, so to speak. Whenever anybody hears me talking about how I'm trying to get this one through the city or through codes enforcement, they think that I'm trying to be sneaky about things. Well, I'm not at all. I'm trying to toe the line between what can be grandfathered and what needs to get fixed. I'm not trying to leave unsafe things in the house, but there are certain things that basically the way it goes is, when this house was built, that thing was to code. The code has since changed, but since you haven't touched that thing that was correct at the time it was built, it is grandfathered in and you don't need to change it. I'm trying to find as many of those things as possible, because once again, if I had to tear all of those items out and start new, well, my budget would be bigger than a new build. And that's why I also talk about the disease of new builderitis, where every contractor, or not every contractor, the contractors with new builderitis, they want to come in there and their only response to anything is, well, you got to tear it out and start new. Well, sure. I mean, that is one option, but that's not the most creative option. That doesn't come from somebody who really understands how things are put together. Therefore, you can tear it apart strategically. That way you can keep your costs down and still meet the requirements of safety and livability and cosmetic appeal. How do I prevent budgets from being blown then? Well, understanding these things, being educated on them is step number 1. And hey, that's why I'm here, is to try to teach you about these things. So in the last podcast, actually, we talked about the different things that I look for when I'm buying a house. And that is just it. I'm looking for the things that we were just discussing. Another thing that you want to make sure that you always do is leave a financial contingency. When you underwrite your deals, leave a lot of fluff in there. Write every budget conservatively. And if the deal still works, then great. My usual formula is that I want to make 20% on the money that goes into the flip, but it doesn't have to be any better than that. If I've underwritten it conservatively and that works, no more questions need to be asked. And finally, you need to have a system for making budgets and scopes of work so you can do it quickly. When you have what I find happens is, if you have a complex way of making budgets, you tend to start to get lazy on it, and that's when you really get caught by these things. And so you want to have a structure, a template for building these budgets that doesn't take you that long and is pretty easy to do, and that way you do it consistently. Third reason that I quit flipping houses is finding actual good deals is exhausting. There are a few different ways to find deals. One is on the MLS, on the market, usually through a real estate agent. You can buy from a wholesaler. You can buy from a different third party like a bank or an auction, or you can buy directly from the seller. Basically, in all cases, the more work that you have to put in to get that deal, the better the price is going to be. Example, if you're buying off the market, you don't have to put much work in at all. The deals, you could go type in an address right now and you would get there. And you pay the most if you're buying off the market. Whereas if you went direct to seller, well, you got to do a lot of work to go direct to seller, at least consistently, but you will get the best deals. Why is that? Well, it's because the market becomes smaller. So when you want to buy a house on the market, well, that means that everybody can see it. They can see it easily. Therefore, it's an issue of supply and demand. The supply, the people there to buy that house, is very large. Therefore, the price that they get is going to be the highest. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the direct to seller, well, you might be the only person talking to that person. Therefore, you're the market of one. And the price that is considered is between you and them. They may have other factors that are much more important to them than maximizing the price. It may be that they don't want to have a bunch of people walking through their house. They don't want to have 1 million inspections. They want to close really quickly. They don't want to have to clean all the crap out of their house first. They don't want to have to do these repairs that they feel like are required to go to the market. And those things are very valuable to them. Therefore, they'd rather sell at what they might know is a discount to what they could get on the MLS, because they're discounting that extra portion of money for their time involvement, is basically what they're doing. And it is a lot of work. I mean, if you buy that house, especially the standard house you'll buy off market, there's a lot of stuff you're going to have to do to that house. You're going to get paid for your work, but that is your career. It's not their career. And so you want to try to get yourself in the position where you are a smaller market. The house, or going through a wholesaler, well, if it's a newer wholesaler that you're dealing with, they're going to have a smaller pool of buyers. Therefore, you will generally get better deals from them. There is another point to make there, that the newer wholesalers don't generally get the best deals up front. Therefore, even if they were basically selling you the house at their cost, that cost is not usually that great. Then you have your pro wholesalers who have been in the game a long time. They'll get great deals on the front end, but also buying from them is going to be pretty close to the prices that you might get on the MLS. They'll discount some. A lot of times somewhere in the middle is the happy medium. And then you have your other third parties like the bank or auctions. In my experience, the auctions that are online only are not usually great deals because anybody can easily get online. Market is bigger. Whereas the auctions where you have to seek them out, they're not marketed well. Sometimes you'll get better deals there. And then with banks, I bought houses from banks who don't usually deal with that kind of stuff, and you can get a pretty good deal there. They usually have rules on, so many people have to give offers. So, but some have a system for getting all those people to put in offers, and some don't really deal with this a lot. And once again, the one that's harder to find is going to be the one where your deals are better. Now, I do have a lot of strategies on how to get better deals on the MLS, how to get better deals from wholesalers. I don't really talk much about these third-party things. It's not really my main way of getting deals. Don't really have a reason for that, except for it's just never been my focus. I've never needed that as a source because MLS, wholesalers, and direct to seller give me plenty, and it also gives me a lot of control over my system. But for now, number one, the MLS, find the right real estate agent. Not any real estate agent will do. They need to actually know the investment game. A lot of real estate agents do not understand our world at all. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. They have their own world. Find one that understands yours. And actually, a lot of those also deal with wholesalers. So they might have a network of wholesalers where they can bring you all the deals. Now dealing with wholesalers, quick overview. Obviously, there's more than this to it, but don't try to deal with all of the wholesalers. Pick a couple or a few and build deep relationships with them and be a trustworthy buyer to them. And then direct to seller, you can do some things pretty simply to get some deals directly to the seller. Set up a website, just a homepage so people know you're legit. Maybe a social media, just so people know you're legit. You didn't just set up camp yesterday. And send outbound mail. Don't send much. Send it directly to a neighborhood that you want and set up a phone number where you can take those calls. Not that expensive. You spend a few $1,000 and you'll be able to generate your own lead. I promise you, if you get one deal out of that, you will make up all the money that you had to spend to set that up in one rip. Next reason flipping houses sucks. Projecting ARV. It can be very difficult. If you miss at all, it could blow a whole deal. Go back to the deal that I was just talking about that broke me. I missed because it was in a neighborhood that wasn't appreciating like the rest of the market. And I speculated and I got caught. I think most people understand how you figure out the value of a house. But basically, what you do is you take like properties, comps, comparables, and you say, hey, my house is in this neighborhood and it is this many square feet and it's this many beds and baths. Here are some other houses that are those same specs or close to those specs in similar shape to my house. And these three that are just like that sold for $200,000. Therefore, I can be pretty sure that my house will sell for $200,000. That's pretty easy. And that's why you try to buy houses in neighborhoods, because there usually is evidence to support your ARV. Where it gets difficult is when you're in places that don't have a lot of comps. And so you have to use comps that aren't exactly comps. Maybe it's not exactly in that neighborhood, but it's in a neighborhood that's similar, that's close. Maybe it's not the same beds or baths. Maybe it's a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. And then you have to make adjustments. There's lots of content out there on how to comp houses properly. The things that are often overlooked that catch people are neighborhood boundaries. So you want to make sure that you are in the same neighborhood or know that you're in a different neighborhood and you're using that as a comp anyway, which usually is never best practice. I would only do that if I had no other option. But to know your neighborhood boundaries, sometimes there's a train track. You know, it seems like this neighborhood is the same as that, but there's a train track down the middle, and that is a known separator. One side of the train tracks is very appealing to buyers. The other side is not at all. And especially for out of town buyers, this gets overlooked a lot, and I've seen it catch a lot of people. Personal bias. Numbers are numbers, guys. Don't let your personal bias get in the way. Usually meaning I want it to be worth this much, because it's really hard to find deals out there, as we talked about before. And I just really want this one to work out, whether you are consciously doing that or subconsciously. That is usually what happens. I'm tired of underwriting deals. This one's close enough. I'm just going to tell myself it's good enough. And then finally, trusting other people's opinions. Learn to underwrite deals yourself. Other people will steer you wrong. Maybe not on purpose, but maybe they just have a different big picture strategy than you, and that deal might work in their strategy. And finally, vampires. These are litigators, Uncle Sam, and bankers. Now, I'm not going to get too much in depth here because I think it might get me in trouble to give any advice on these kind of things. But the things that you need to look out for are getting sued. So make sure that you've got an insurance and set yourself up properly where you're not making mistakes. Don't go too crazy here. This is a total analysis paralysis kind of thing. But make sure you've set up your basic stuff. 2, Uncle Sam, you got to pay your taxes. Now, you should talk with a CPA and an attorney about how to set up the structure for your company the right way to make sure that you mitigate taxes as much as you can. However, do not let this be a stopper from getting you in the game, because you don't have to pay any taxes on money you've never made. So get yourself set up in business and make some money. Bankers is number 3. Don't forget about interest and points. And I might even group title companies in here and title fees and all those things. These are all costs that get people that you have to pay, and you really need to make part of the underwriting of your deal. So house flipping really can suck. So why do I continue to do it? Here are the reasons that I continue to do it. 1 is it continues to hone my skills. So you can, as many flips as you can do, you keep getting better every time you are able to look around more corners, and that makes you a better investor. And 2, you grow your cash reserves. So I'm specifically talking about flipping here, not flipping to a rental, flipping a house to the market. You grow your cash reserves, therefore you can buy more rentals or invest more money to grow your bigger picture plan. You keep the best contractors. That's number 3. The more work that you have going on, the more flips you're able to do, the more contractors that you're able to give confidence to that you have the next project lined up. And then you'll continue to keep leveling up your vendor pool. And that will help you on the ones that you do hold as rentals. 4, you create cost efficiencies. You have more projects going on, you're able to create cost efficiencies between them. And so those are the reasons that I keep flipping houses. But remember that your main goal shouldn't be just to be a house flipper, because that brings you job income. You know, you could have a job somewhere else, or you could be a house flipper, and that's how you make your regular income. But that is not investing for the future. That is where rentals come in. And so I keep house flipping because it helps me grow my portfolio in the ways that I just outlined. But that is always the main goal, is to grow my portfolio of rental revenue.